Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Secret Origins of Mint Condition. I am your host, James, and if you looked at what we were talking about today, I'm going to start this podcast off with this line this time. And what did you expect, yellow spandex? Because I think that is the line that fully encompasses the journey we've been on with our subject matter today. But before I get to our subject matter, I'm going to introduce our guests. So we have part of X-Men Gold Team back with us again. So, of course, joining us is the oracle of all things X-Men. Arco Esposito is with us.
Thank you very much, James. Guys, good to see you again.
Thank you. A man who is just as cool, Bishop, Sharif McIntosh is with us.
Hey, everybody.
And, of course, the man who always comes in with excellent questions, our what is it, inquisitor or questioner? His mutant power is to analyze, question, and give excellent feedback. Josh Murray is joining us again.
Oh, hello.
And Allie, who was on our X-Men 97 podcast, who actually gave the idea on that podcast for this episode, unfortunately couldn't be with us this evening, but shout out to her. And Allie, I hope you're enjoying this episode. And there'll be future X-Men episodes, I'm sure, for you to be on. So I opened up with that line because I feel like that line, what did you expect, yellow spandex, shows the journey of the X-Men movies, because we're doing this, audience, in case you don't know why. Deadpool Wolverine is coming out soon. And we've gone through a journey where movies, when they started adapting comic books, with X-Men being the first of that, I guess, real ride to comic book stuff. We're not going to talk about the Dolph Lundgren Punisher and the ill-fated Fantastic Four Roger Corman movie. We're going to...
Captain America, 1991.
Oh, yeah, Captain America 1991, where the Red Skull was Italian. But I count it with Blade. Blade 1 was the start of like the actual renaissance of, or not the renaissance, but the actual movies that we consider today of the MCU. So
the Trailblazer.
The Trailblazer, yeah. And
Yes.
Hollywood was like, we're not putting them in the spandex costumes. We're black leather. And now we've got a movie where Hugh Jackman, over 20 years playing Logan, is wearing, finally, he looks like Wolverine. I mean, we haven't seen him in the mask yet, but I know the mask is coming. Yeah. So he is dressed like Wolverine. So this is sort of a wrap up of the Fox universe, because I feel like Deadpool Wolverine is going to be the end of the Fox universe and hopefully the restart of the MCU universe. And we got thoughts about over 20 years of X-Men. So Arco, I'll start with you, because last time I ended with you in the X-Men 97 episode.
Cool, thank you.
Let's start with you. I don't even know where to begin. Let's start with the overall thoughts of the Fox universe.
Well, James, I think that we can say that the Fox universe picked up where Blade left off, showing us that the comic book genre could be a viable and profitable industry for movies. And we knew that for 15, 20 years before, they've been trying to put these films out in a way that was going to make sense and make money. And they finally figured out the formula. And it took the most popular group of comic book heroes to do it, the X-Men, to really put the comic book movies on the map for the most part. However, let's be honest, there are two halves to the Fox run of films. You have 2000 to 2010, and then everything after 2010. We've gone through various X-Men teams. We've gone through various characters, same characters, different players earlier. It's amazing how we went back in time, and then we went forward in time through the 2010s, and Michael Fassbender, I don't know what happened to those guys in 10 years, but he went from looking like Michael Fassbender to Ian McKellen. Ian McKellen's not even dead yet, but I mean, Jesus, what the hell happened to that man in the 90s? So, James, overall, I loved that the X-Men was the group that brought comics to the fore for everybody. However, I really do feel like there has been a lot of missed opportunities, and not even for fan service, because I think I'm beyond fan service at this point. What I'm looking for the most is good stories, and they really kind of missed the mark on a lot of them. And we'll talk about that later on.
Yeah, I don't use a lot of sports analogies because I'm not a sports person, but I feel like I love the X-Men Fox franchise. There's a lot to love. there's also like this thing where they had the ball and they dropped the ball, and somehow they got the ball back. And then they dropped the ball again.
Yeah. It's not many times that you can run with a fumble and fumble it again, and then maybe get another chance to get that fumble back and still mess it up. Right? 'Cause they did.
And you can argue that Deadpool and Wolverine, they got the ball back and they still dropped it with Phoenix and New Mutants. But
You're right.
But I digress. Sharif, what's your like overall impressions of the Fox X-Men universe?
Well, let me tell you, it was a time when the first X-Men movie was like in pre-production. We would read about it in magazines back in these times, Josh. This is how we got our entertainment. This is where we got our entertainment news from. So we read about
physical media.
So we read about it in a magazine, and prior to X-Men coming out, me and Arco are loving X-Men, and we were talking about it, and we were like, we don't have the technology to bring X-Men to the screen, and that was the big hurdle. But because people were like, well, Superman came out and all these other superhero movies, why not the X-Men? And we all knew that the X-Men's special effects for the X-Men was way beyond what Hollywood could do at the time. So just even making Wolverine heal was like a phenomenal feat for them, and that was something that took a lot. They had to get to some milestones with special effects before they could even do the X-Men. So I remember we were thinking, like maybe not in our lifetime will we have X-Men, because special effects were rudimentary at this time, so we didn't think we were going to get the X-Men. And so when it got announced, we were super duper excited. We were praying that it would be good because we loved the X-Men so much. We were so happy to be, and truthfully, I forgave a lot. Like there's a lot of missteps in the X-Men. Don't get me wrong, I love X-Men. The first X-Men 2000, great movie. I love it. Watch it to this day. All the time, if it's on, I watch it. Me and my wife love it. But for a comic book reader, X-Men has a lot of flaws. They mess with the timelines, they mess with the ages, they mess with a lot of things. But overall, I'll still say that, the Fox universe was, think about it. You've got the Sony universe, right? So the Fox universe was a shining beacon of light.
Do we have the Sony universe, sir?
We don't have it. Sony has the Sony universe.
They can keep it.
The fans don't have anything. We're grasping at straws, but yeah. So the X-Men, I really thought Fox did a great job with the IP. X-Men was great. X-Men 2 was really, really great. They did exactly what a sequel is supposed to do. You develop the characters more in the second film. You have a bigger story, and you fill in the blanks, and you step it up a notch. All of the things that people were complaining about Wolverine not going berserk, Wolverine goes berserk in X-Men 2, and then of course, they dropped the ball with X-Men Last Stand, a horror show. I never watched that movie ever. And the sad part is X-Men Last Stand has so many mutants that I totally wanted to see who are making their debut on screen, but unfortunately couldn't appreciate them. So, unfortunately they didn't stick the landing with the trilogy, but X-Men 1 and X-Men 2 were great. Nightcrawler, we'll get into the specifics, but that opening scene of X-Men 2 with Nightcrawler, like that,
amazing.
Absolutely.
It was magic.
I have goosebumps about that, right? Like I just watched that and I was like, this is like super quality cinema. And also the cinematography was really, really great. It looked like a comic book. There's a cheesy way to make it look like a comic book where you literally try to make it. You remember that debacle called the Hulk, right? The original Hulk, where he tried to put little screens
and cells,
so it would look like a comic book, which was terrible. But I appreciate the effort though.
Exactly, that's the only way to describe it. Appreciate the effort, but it didn't work out.
X-Men, the shadows, the way that they did it, it was exactly the cinematography of a comic book. In comic books, Wolverine, sometimes you can't see his face, you just see shadows and maybe the butt of his cigarette or a cigar, and then all of those elements from the comic book were in the X-Men, and I really, really, really appreciated that. And I thought all the casting was spot on. Everybody was really, really great. I mean, Patrick Stewart is like, he's Professor X, like, for
Mhm.
all intents and purposes. And I didn't really care for that time jump and go back, and now we see young Professor X. So I didn't. X-Men First Class is a great film, though. It's a great film. It's got a lot of flaws, but ultimately it's a great film. But I still just didn't like this young cast of the same characters, and they're all great. It's just, I don't know, just something about it. I guess
Well,
because Arco, in the comics, were there ever any young Professor X
Yeah,
flashbacks?
they would, yes, but they would, any flashbacks of Professor X usually had something to do with Magneto, which is why the First Class movie, the first one, worked so well, and the second one even more so. So you have the relationship kind of building through the various decades that they're together. One quick point, though, to Sharif about the casting, I will say that Fassbender as a young Magneto works better than James McAvoy as a young Professor X, in my opinion.
Really?
Yeah, I really do. I think
Okay, I can see
Fassbender as a
that.
Magneto
Yeah.
really. I love the fact of how much Fassbender got into that role, and that's another thing. And we'll talk about this, but let's one of the biggest points and one of the biggest victories that the X Men universe has had with Fox and for us as fans is that all of these many of these actors have given their all playing these characters. It wasn't just a paycheck for most of them. James Marsden loved being Cyclops. Famke Janssen was into being Jean Grey, and
That's true.
Fassbender. Yeah, so I really think that they helped sell it as best as they possibly could.
Yeah, that's very true. I remember Holly Berry was very concerned about Storm, had done her research on Storm, and really wanted to
Uh,
portray it correctly.
uh,
And that's why she did that terrible
and she
African
failed
accent
miserably.
in the
She gave
beginning.
up in the
yeah,
second
And
one.
it,
you know what? It's better to fail big than succeed small, so I'll take
So
it.
yeah,
but yeah, just to end it, I overall, I love the Fox universe. Obviously, in the beginning it was amazing, and then it fell off miserably at the end. But still, I always had hope. I went into New Mutants, um,
oh
bright-eyed and bushy-tailed,
my God, sir,
thinking
you'll
I was
watch
gonna
anything.
thinking I was gonna get something, um, something moderately decent at least, but never. And you know what they did to you. You saw how they massacred my boy Apocalypse. Look how they massacred my boy.
Ivan Ooze, you mean? Yes.
Yes. Well, and so so this we get everyone's way and thoughts, and then we'll start diving into individual things we want to get into. But Josh, what's your overall thoughts on the Fox verse?
Well, it was the funny thing in hindsight is how full circle it came out because X-Men 1 was my so I used to collect X-Men comics as a kid, but hearing how you guys collected X-Men comics, I would not say I collected them.
Mm,
Apparently, I just fumbled through them haphazardly as I discovered them
I
because
forgive you.
you guys know them way better. But but so I was more of a cartoon guy, right? And then like cartoon and I don't say mythology, but for lack of a better word, like a friend of the podcast, John Hanson, we grew up together. And if he was telling me about X Men, I would be like listening, so it's like I would get my comic knowledge almost through him reading it, and then it's kind of how I passed school too. Just everyone told me what the reading was about, and then I would just like take the test. But so I was a cartoon guy. So now it's like when that came out. It was like, wait, we're getting live action X-Men. This is so crazy. But now in like 2024, I'm like, don't ever give me live action X-Men ever again. Just give me the cartoon. That's all I want is the cartoon. So it's like funny how I went from
That is a great
wanting the
point. That
movie
is a great
and then I
point.
just want the cartoon again. But it was easier for me to enjoy them because I didn't have any. They weren't massacring my boy because my boy was just what the movie told me it was, and so X-Men One, just like everybody else, it kind of like blew your mind. Me, I think it's still good, but when I revisit it, it doesn't hold up as much as the other ones do. But that's if we kind of talked about Blade being like a trailblazer, but like X-Men kind of was that too. So it's always gonna have not the staying power as when it gets refined over the years. But yeah, the seeing Nightcrawler and all like X2 blew my mind. The Berserker scene, like all of that was just so nuts, and it was a kind of grittier, which I always liked. But I was a sucker for First Class. I won't even see past tense. I love that movie. Like it's because you're always told, especially because also a lot of my X-Men knowledge came from Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Shout out to one of the greatest games ever made. But so like you hear all this stuff about like Magneto being the most powerful mutant and ever, right? And then in the movies, he's like just taking like iron out of someone's blood. And you're like, I guess okay, like, but then in First Class, you're like, oh no, he is impossibly strong because metal is everywhere. He's like pulling people's teeth out, and so seeing him use his powers in that way just like melted my mind. Like when he like threw the knife and then recalled it back, and you're just like, it's such cool ways to use the powers that I haven't seen before. Using a coin as like a projectile, like, and it's just like all that stuff was so great, and that's kind of what got reinvigorated with the cartoons is I'm seeing all these powers being used in a way I've never seen them before. And then X Days of Future Past was great because that's the first time you get Quicksilver, right? And so they used the technique that Futurama used in its last original airing when Fry drinks 100 cups of coffee, and then he's moving regular speed, but everybody else is just moving like so much slower, and that's kind of like what Quicksilver like running around. It made me question how he listens to his music because he's moving so fast that wouldn't he only like he puts on the music, but he would only be listening to the space in between notes because it was all done so fast. It was like faster than a bullet flies. He ran around the room. So like, what is he listening to in his ears? It's just like he wouldn't even hear a note. It just happened so fast. But the opening to Days of Future Past was like so X-Men 97 has like the top tier for me. And then the opening of Days of Future Past with the Sentinels, like they showed how scary Sentinels are. Cause like even now, as a grown man, when I watch like Days of Future Past with my wife, we're just like, ugh, like when the Sentinels are, cause they're the creepiest things. But then like all the jumping and with Blink and all that stuff, it was just like so cool. For me, it would have been nearly a perfect movie, except they show Stryker as Mystique at the end of the movie. It's kind of like a mind blowing, oh wow. But then I'm just like, but wait, so does Wolverine just have like bone claws forever? If Stryker doesn't find him to do the thing,
Don't hurt yourself, Josh.
exactly right. Like,
That's,
and so and so that's where it all falls. And then like
no,
I'm not.
it didn't fall apart for me. I just said, okay, I'll forgive it.
Like no, like, and so I guess because like it makes sense because you guys made so many concessions along the way, being such fans, whereas I like didn't. So that was so jarring to me, and I'm not saying that it hindered the rest of the movies because they did a very good job of that themselves. But like, I think it's like you remember. I don't even remember the guy's name, but there's a politician that like cheered and went like, "Yeah," and then he lost the whole election because of it. To me,
Yes.
that's what like the X-Men Sony universe was. Is that "Yeah" was like the yellow of Mystique's eyes as Stryker, and I'm like but what happens now? Like, what is the point of that? Like, does she just give him over to Stryker to get the adamantium back? But if that's the case, then why add that stinger? Just have Stryker find him at the end. And so none of that made sense. And I was just dying to know if he's got metal claws again or not, because it was all like that's an aspect of like the butterfly effect that I feel like you can't undo that. Like I don't know. So anyway, so that's where it fell down, and then No, but and like so there's like silly things that from then on it kind of like opened the Pandora's box of all the silliness that I'm seeing. Like wasn't there's a thing with like in Apocalypse how they massacred your boy, but like Quicksilver can't like get through this impenetrable force field, but like he can move basically like super fast, like not quite speed of light, but like not have it. But then he's like talking through it, and you're like, but doesn't sound travel like slower than like the Quicksilver move? So how's sound getting through? And so it was just to me that was the yeah that like just crumbled the whole thing. So for me, I only go up to like I'll go to Logan because that's like James Marigold. That's Copland. That's 310 to Yuma. That's as good as it gets. That's the one that I recommended, and people said that it was too violent. So I was like, all right, they did something right. That was like perfect. That was great. And I don't even know what I'm talking about right now, but yeah. So I go Days of Future Past and Logan, and then the rest is just nothing until the cartoon comes around again.
No, that was kind of like that. I think what you were like, yeah, I some of the points you made, Josh, I stuck with me too. Like, and I just like Arco and Sharif forgave it, but I also was like with some of the stuff they did in like First Class and like what you're talking about in Days of Future Past was like, you had such a good movie, and then I feel like you tried to be too clever. You tried to be more clever than you needed to be, and you already had a good movie.
And I think that's why X-Men 97 works so well, is because they didn't go above and beyond in the cleverness. They knew the threshold. They knew like that line, because that's kind of there's like a thin line. Like if you go past it, then it's just silly. But if you go up to it, it's like magic.
They did not have to do much to tweak it. They did
Very
do a little bit of
true,
tweaking, but all they did was get all these stories, and we talked about how many different storylines there were in these 8, 9, 10 episodes, and they were able to seamlessly almost put them all together. And you didn't tell every single storyline; you told bits and pieces of it, and they made it work. You had the template. It's basically puzzle pieces, and you just got to make the puzzle fit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think when things are made into movies, it's like not only do they like suffer if they don't have actual comic book fans with the love of the characters like behind the helms, but also they, especially I guess when producers and stuff get involved, they make weird concessions, and that's why like I know we're talking about X-Men, but in the Sony comic book universe, it's like they're not misses by as much as they think they are. Because say like for Spider-Man, like with Andrew Garfield and stuff, yeah, they made him like a skater punk and not like a nerd. But the chemistry that he had with Gwen Stacy like was better than any chemistry from the Sam Raimi stuff that we love.
That's because they were dating.
Well, yeah, but see, like, but it gets that across. It gets that. I mean, I also think that they would have that even if they weren't. I think they have very good chemistry together. Like even then, but like, or like with so it's like that's why you'll have even now with Marvel, they never fully, in my opinion, got the best Peter Parker and best Spider-Man as one. It's always like Tobey Maguire is a great Peter Parker, not a great Spider-Man. Andrew Garfield's not a great Peter Parker, great Spider-Man, and that just like happens. I saw it in like the Batman movie. So they make all these concessions on, and they double down on the weird aspects of a comic book movie that you wouldn't double down on, and I think that's where it gets so muddied.
Yeah,
They're maybe trying to reach everybody too much.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, Josh. I think a lot of people talk about this. I don't know if this is real or not. This is like a Hollywood insider thing, but they say that it's a movie by committee versus a director or writer's vision. And when you view outside of that, then that's where you veer off the beaten path, because you need to have a person with a singular vision. I think movies will always suffer if you put somebody at the helm who's not a real fan, who has a cursory knowledge of the comic book. You've already failed. I think that's why I know Arco doesn't want to hear about the DC universe, but I think that's why James Gunn at the helm is a great thing for the DC universe, because he's a real comic book head. He loves every aspect of it. And I think that he wouldn't employ somebody like you. Probably have to take a test to work on a movie. Yeah. Like you love comics. Okay, what's your favorite? What's the number of your favorite comic book?
However, real fast on that, Sharif, is that if Superman bombs spectacularly, I promise you that people at DC are going to be second guessing James Gunn and not going to be saying,
100%.
and not we're going to give him 2 or 3 movies to fix it. No.
See, the problem. Yeah, the problem with the DC is that they've dug themselves into a hole. So now James Gunn has to be the savior, and Superman has to succeed.
And that's not fair.
Not exactly, because Marvel had Iron Man, and if Iron Man would have flopped, it wouldn't have been the end of the world. It would have been fine. But now there's all of this pressure for James Gunn that DC has to succeed. Sorry, now we're turning this into the DC podcast. All right. But back to your point, I believe that too many chefs in the kitchen on a film
100%.
is always bad, and it's worse with a comic book movie. It's bad with any movie, but with a comic book movie in particular, it's really, really bad because some random producer loves Rhino, and so Rhino needs to appear at the end of the film and ruin everybody's lives because it was terrible. It was a waste of who was it?
Paul Giamatti.
Paul Giamatti.
A waste of him for sure. He's incredible.
I love Paul Giamatti. And they had him doing the Russian accent, and it was a complete waste. It never paid off. It was terrible. And so, and to me, you can make a movie that's really, really, really decent, right? And then at the end, you have like that last 5 minutes of a film that can make or break you as far as what people are going to leave the theater thinking or finish the movie off thinking. And I think that if you don't stick the landing, especially with a comic book movie, they may not come back for the sequel because you left them with that bad feeling of this was trash.
Yeah.
So to tie it all together, you had 1 and 2 came out. X-Men 1 came out in 2000. 2003 was X-Men 2. Amazing film. Even a more amazing film with the second one. Okay, and then the third one, I was looking forward to it. And talk about not sticking the landing. It to me looked like the epitome of an FX film on the big screen. Okay, something that you would definitely see. Well, you saw it millions of times afterwards on FX, but it looked like it was made for FX. Between the story, the sets, it was not good at all, and it left a bad taste in your mouth going into Wolverine, which I also had high hopes for. The best part of that film, okay, of Wolverine was the first 5 minutes, that montage where him and Sabretooth are going through the time periods and they're being soldiers or mercs or whatever. And that was the best part of that film. It just goes to show you, James, that the pressure to make these films better than the last one sometimes supersedes the fact that it needs to be as good to make the narrative overall cohesive and fit together. Or else you just have 1 film, 2 film, 3 films, and 1 and 2 are great, 3 sucked. Let's hope 4 comes okay, and we know it was basically up and down through the 2010s.
Well, that's like, obviously that's what's happened with the current MCU and Star Wars properties. Is someone's like, we got to pull it back, which is why I think Deadpool Wolverine is the only Marvel MCU property coming out this year, other than X-Men 97.
It's smart, because it's just, besides it being oversaturated, they also very, very, very quickly lost sight of what the audience likes, and they just started projecting onto them. It's like what I always think of is Age of Ultron, right? Because Avengers 1 was like so great. It's probably like nothing I revisit because I can't stand that everybody's just giving quippy one-liners all the time. But I saw I saw Avengers 2, and I think everyone was like, oh, they love the New York scene in Avengers, so for this one, since it's a sequel, let's just do Sokovia, and we'll just do it for like a whole half of the movie, just nonstop action. They'll love it. It's like, no, but they don't love that because it's boring. Like, nonstop action is boring. And so like when I was watching, it was like a midnight release, and the movie's super long, and I'm watching Age of Ultron, and there's like, I don't know, like a 45-minute fight, and then Captain America goes, quick, hurry up before the second like attack comes. I was like, there's another one coming? Oh my god. Like I just wanted to like leave and be done with it.
Kill them.
Yeah, right? I was like, at this point, just drop all of it onto the world. Just end it. And but I think they get the they miss it because they think of how good Iron Man 1 was, but like the action sequences are pretty quaint in Iron Man 1. Like he
Yes,
like
very sweet.
attacks like he like frees a village, he flies with some like jets, and then he like throws someone through a bus and flies them up until he freezes. And like that's all of the action in it. But that's not why people came to it. And they're like, no, they want more action. And so the movies got longer and longer to a point where I felt like it was just like, all right, we need a new Marvel movie. The length of the movie is 2 hours and 53 minutes. Write it, and you're like, no, why are you giving me the length of the movie before I write it? Because that's what it feels like. Because they're just like, no, just fill up this time slot however you want.
Yeah.
And so, like to Sharif's point, like when I go to a movie and I see like written by, and there's like a committee of names, I'm just like, oh boy, this is not going to be good.
Well, I mean, to your point, Josh, just to like, I'm going to steer it back to X-Men a little.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
No, it's good. I love the whole conversation.
Quicksilver's in both of them. All right, good.
He is. But I think the X-Men X1 and X2, like, there weren't that many action sequences because they couldn't afford them. The X-Men 1 ended up with the big Statue of Liberty scene, which arguably a lot of that took place like with stunt doubles and practical effects and maybe a little bit of CGI. And then X2 led up to like Jean Grey stopping the dam, which is the biggest probably expense in that movie.
Yeah.
But all those two movies are just like the characters, the X-Men drama that we all love. Like,
and I think with First Class, it was very much like not that many action sequences, but there were like scenes of mutant powers being used. Like, so you saw Magneto stopping a tank or throwing this. You saw Kevin Bacon like he has the same power as Bishop. Is that it, right? That he can like absorb like energy, right?
Sebastian Shaw has the same power.
That's his real power was nothing like that. It was to absorb kinetic energy and redirect it as strength and power, but it had nothing to do with energy like Bishop did.
Okay, because like, but like, so you saw him like, stop a grenade and everything like that. So like, so you got to see their powers in different like bursts, but they also had scenes around the power, like when Magneto's like, shoot me in the head, I'll stop it, and like Professor X is like, no, why don't you just try to turn that satellite dish instead of me shooting you point blank in the face? But like those kind of like scratch the itch of the action sequence, and then when you replace those character building moments with flat character quips in which you see the memes of like the guy looking out the window as like Cyclops is making an offhand comment to Wolverine while like blasting a car you're still making payments on, just like and you're just watching them like like Team America World Police just destroy everything making quips, and that kind of is what got put into the movies, and they took away all those great little character moments that still had the fun illusion of action because you're seeing the powers at work, but it was engaging. And so, yeah.
I agree. I mean, that's why I'm there for like, most of these films, I'm there for the character pieces, not the action pieces. Like the action pieces I expect just because we're in a comic book movie, but Avengers, like I've said before in this podcast, like Avengers, the original Avengers works for me because of all the character building and interactions with those characters the first time. X-Men 1 and X-Men 2 and First Class and Days of Future Past is a fantastic movie. It just it requires, it's much like the Avengers, it requires you to have sat through X-Men 1 through 3 and First Class to earn its like you sit there because they're like, oh, they're back the way they're supposed to be. I mean,
and the pattern was kind of the same, right? Because you have like a great Iron Man movie, great Captain America, okay Thor-ish movie. I saw Thor. I didn't really like it, but it was also explained to me like, oh, I saw Thor. You would hate it. Like that's like how it was described to me. So it was kind of preloaded. But then you get Avengers, and Avengers was the best Iron Man movie. It was the best Captain America movie, and it was the best Thor movie, and the best Hulk movie, like all in one. And then I feel like with X-Men, when you got to Days of Future Past, like James said, if you did all the studying and you watched all the movies up to there, then you got like the best Magneto movie, you got the best Professor X movie, and you got the best Wolverine scene with his one line as like the best line in the whole movie when they're like, we're recruiting something. It's like, go yourself. But Yeah, so but like you got to see the best of all of these characters, and then that got watered down the more each movie went on, and then you got the worst of Apocalypse and Phoenix,
Right.
and yeah,
And to piggyback off what you're saying, Josh, I believe that making Wolverine the centerpiece of the first two films was a mistake. In retrospect, I love Wolverine. He's the greatest. I know, Josh, you recently came on board.
recently, yeah, I'm a new convert.
So, but Wolverine is awesome, and there's nothing wrong with Wolverine, but it's an X-Men movie. And X-Men needs to be about the X-Men. It needs to be about the dynamic. It needs to be about Professor X. It needs to be about what their mission is, what their goal is, and we need character developed for everybody, not just like we knew nothing about Scott. Scott could have got smacked around when he was a kid. He could have been an altar boy. We
Yeah,
would never know. So I think they missed Storm. Like even Holly Berry was complaining that Storm didn't have any backstory whatsoever, and she's like, why am I using an African accent
yeah,
if you're never going to tell anybody that I'm from Africa?
yeah.
So and I'm just saying that because I don't know. I was Arco. Where's Storm really from?
Kenya.
You know what country? Oh,
She's from
really?
Kenya. Yes, so
Okay.
she was
Nice.
she was thought of as a goddess in Kenya. That's when Charles Xavier went to recruit her in Giant Size X-Men #1. She was basically just she didn't. I guess she knew she was a mutant. I don't know if that word was in the Kenyan lore back then, but she was helping the people with their crops and everything. But she was originally from Egypt, and her parents were killed when a plane crashed into their apartment. She survived. The parents were dead, but that is where she got her crippling phobia of
Claustrophobia.
claustrophobia from.
So, question now with Storm, you say she was like helping the people in the village and stuff like that. Do we know, like, was there a time in which she didn't know she was a mutant, or even like the Kenyan word for mutant? Did she ever believe that maybe she was a goddess?
I believe there were stories that came out afterwards, and also where they show where she first met King T'Challa, the Black Panther, how they knew each other from when they were younger. So there is a backstory there. It's that her original story is that she grew up in the plains on her own.
Because that would be an interesting story. Like if you spend your whole life or your whole like growing into your teen or young adult thinking you're a goddess, and then just some dude in a wheelchair is like, not to rain on your parade, you do have those powers, but you're not a goddess. You just have a genetic defect.
That's pretty much what Professor X said to her. Yeah.
I would have like I don't know if this exists, but like I would do a whole comic of like her downward spiral coming to grips with like I'm still special. I still have this power. I can still do good, but I'm not who I thought I was. Like
I'm not Zeus.
yeah, exactly. I'm just like because in that reality, like, but then I'm just a person that could like control the weather. Like I was a god until I met this man, and so I think that might be like an interesting thing. But
That's the thing is that Storm does have a great backstory. Bishop has a great backstory. Kitty Pryde has a great backstory.
I don't know Bishop's backstory. He's just a time traveler dude, right?
Fox Universe could not put those stories on paper, and why couldn't they do that? Because they decided that they were going to hitch their trailer on one character, just like Marvel did. Okay, so the Fox Universe chose Wolverine, they chose Logan, and let's be honest, for the most part, it has worked. Okay, through 2009, 2010, it worked. I mean, hell, they gave him their own movie. Who cares that it sucked? You got to say that he was at least good in his film. The film sucked. So, and they kept on bringing him back for little pieces here and there because, in the end, the backbone of the Fox cinematic universe has always been Logan and Wolverine.
Right.
I mean, I agree. I mean, if Logan had shown up in Dark Phoenix, the second one,
yeah,
it would have like helped that movie 20%.
Brought it just to about 15% overall.
But the fact that he was not in, I'm going to admit it, like I'll be one of those people, like he was not in that movie. He was not in New Mutants. And I mean, not that he should have been in New Mutants, but.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it got to the point. where
missed.
you had to accept that if Wolverine was going to be in the movie was going to be better. So you couldn't separate the two. You wanted a good movie, and you knew if Wolverine was in it, they would have took more care with the writing and everything. And it was almost like Hugh Jackman was like, "Listen, I'm not showing up unless you guys got your
Well,
lives together," you know.
Yeah,
yeah,
I agree.
I think they backed themselves into a corner and they picked a weird time to be like, you know what, I'm not going to stay in that corner anymore. It's like, no, if you made Wolverine, like you're saying, the center point of your universe, yeah, you might want to spread it out, but you still have to do that, like slowly, like get Wolverine more like a backseat, like, bring other people forward, have him
Right.
slowly moving back, and
Exactly.
almost like you can like pass the torch. And I feel like, again, not to get off of X-Men, but that's where Marvel is stumbling now too, because like, oh yeah, this is the new Captain America, and Iron Man's not there anymore, just like out of nowhere, and you're like, whoa, wait, this like little 2 minute scene at the end of like the last Avengers movie is not enough to make us feel comfortable with Cap not being around anymore, and so it's just like they. I feel like they're just pulling the plug too quick,
Well,
and it's
Josh, they're
hard.
beating the horse until the horse can't go any longer, and they're
Yeah.
they're not setting it up for the future. They really put all of their eggs in Wolverine, the Wolverine basket, let's say, and they put all their eggs in Marvel, in Captain America and Iron Man. In the beginning, it was just Iron Man, and Captain
Yeah,
America just came
yeah,
along, thankfully. So there was a duality between the two of them that they could build upon
like,
in Civil War. So
which they
without
could have done
those,
with Scott and Logan too, right? But they didn't. Sorry,
yeah,
not to.
I mean, there was always that, and they tried to play that up. The fact of the matter is, Hugh Jackman was just that much more charismatic than
Yeah,
Scott Marsden was as Cyclops, but Scott Marsden played a perfect Cyclops because
Mhm.
James, didn't we say that this is the Cyclops that we all
Yes.
wanted to see when watching X-Men '97? Where was this guy's guts all these years before? This is how he should
Well,
be.
no, I mean the X Men movies gave you the Cyclops that we
No,
came to
that you
expect,
knew. Yeah,
that you knew. Like
yeah,
it gave you the
exactly.
Cyclops, like okay, he loves Jean, he
Yeah,
doesn't like Logan, and he's like
he's the
this.
choir boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah,
not
but
like a personality that you could build like a movie
Yeah,
off
you're
of,
right.
right.
You're right.
Well,
And
I mean, here's the thing though. You could if you did it correctly, right? Because Captain America's got the same problem. Captain America is Mr. All American, Mr. Purity,
Had a better
Mr. Good
backstory
Guy.
though.
But yes, he has a better you're right. He
and
has a
the
better backstory.
conflict of like fish out of water, coming to grips with like, so he has more nuance and complexity than they gave to Cyclops. Like Cyclops, like, you love this guy and you don't like this guy, and it's kind of a love triangle. That's it. And you're just like, well, can I have some sort of other personality trait? Like, no, that's good. I'm not worried about
That's
But
exactly what they did.
it.
but to me, Captain America had a great story arc. Once that all got basically resolved, he still had the story arc of the man at a time. He still had the story arc of I can't be 100% good all the time. Because to me, Captain America is like Superman. They're difficult characters to write for because they're so good. And it's
Mhm.
hard to, if you don't have any, you want a little yin and yang in there. And I think Cyclops has plenty of yin and yang. I think Cyclops is always on the verge of going too far. I think Cyclops is built to go too far, and him getting pushed in his temper is a thing that could be explored.
but they started to do that in X. They started. They showed a little bit of that in the beginning of X3, where he was in there for 20 minutes. And spoiler alert, he gets killed. I didn't see that coming. Okay, but he showed a little bit of a backbone. He was gritty. He had his beard going. He talked back to Logan, and he goes, "Not everybody heals as fast as you do," which is actually a pretty good line. And
Mhm.
and then he goes up to the Yukon and gets turned into ashes, never to be seen again. So I personally believe, well, the fact that and Scott Marsden was going to be in the Superman movie, the fact that they just did not know how to really portray and write Cyclops in a way that was going to be the yang to Wolverine's yin, was better to get rid of him at that point.
Well, they also didn't. I think Well, listen, I feel like we're like also giving the Fox X-Men movies a hard time, not focusing on like some of the good stuff, is it? Because when you nitpick, so we'll have to turn around. But they build these movies around like sort of triumvirates. I've said this before, like about early Star Trek TV shows. It makes them work because you have the three people always up until like recent Trek TV shows, which have gone more ensemble. But you had Hugh Jackman, you had Ian McKellen, and you had Patrick Stewart. Those are the three people of the original movie, and those are who you're going to write to, and those are the people who got the most screen time, arguably, because they're the biggest names.
Right.
And they always wrote. I mean, those are the three characters. If you up until when Hugh Jackman's Wolverine got phased out after Apocalypse, like those are the characters of the movies, like regardless of like where you're going.
Yeah, you're right. And no matter what time frame, because Wolverine is immortal, so you always have him. He can always be around. There's never a time where he's not around, and he gets to be Hugh Jackman every time. So he never has to be young or played by a different character. So yeah, you're right. I will say though, even though all of this negative aside, when X-Men came out, sir, it was a glorious time for comic book fans across the world. And I got to tell you, you know what the real crux of it is, that we were so happy to have X-Men that we were very forgiving. Our suspension of disbelief was on 25,000%, because we were ready. We were so happy to have a movie. We didn't need a perfect movie. And to me, when X-Men 2 came out, we built upon what we already had. We got our Berserker Wolverine. We got Wolverine actually. I mean, I don't know if was he killing people?
No blood.
No blood, but I mean, he's sticking his claws inside in his chest.
And there's a way, they navigated it perfectly that you can let him be berserk, but you could still keep it like family friendly.
Right.
It didn't need to go full Logan, but it still got the point across of like, because like you said, he was so reserved in the first movie that you finally see this, and it's almost like Psycho, right? Like you could almost see the blood, but there is no blood because it's just like you're filling in all like the blanks that aren't there because you're just so excited to see it.
Oh yeah. And we were so happy, and I love the build up. I just watched it, so it's fresh in my mind. But so in X-Men 2, there's a foreshadowing scene where Charles says, I feel sorry for anybody who attempts to come to that house looking for trouble. He says that to Magneto. And then we see the guys come. Now, initially, those guys came, and it wasn't as bad as Charles made it out to seem. It was only Wolverine really taking people out. Other people, they were kind of just surprised because I guess they didn't know.
Well, Iceman blocks stuff, right? Yeah. And then,
yeah.
And I jump through the thing.
Yeah. Iceman was really nerfed, and he didn't get to a place where there's a thing as being a superhero where you learn offense versus defense, and Iceman was all defense, so no offense. And then they didn't let see, I'm complaining again. Dang it. And they didn't let Colossus do his thing. They didn't even show Colossus's full strength. So Colossus comes into the room. He doesn't have his metal on. He metals up. The dudes shoot at him. The bullets bounce off, and then cut to somebody being thrown through the wall. So we get an insinuation that Colossus is really strong, but we didn't see it.
But sir, that was enough to get him another film 10 years later as the freaking husband of Pride, okay? So whatever he did for the 3 seconds, okay? Now, let me tell you a quick story about X-Men #1 really fast. It came out in July of 2000. That night, I was dating the woman who would end up being my wife, and she was had company coming in, family from out west that I had never met before, and she hadn't seen in years. So we were supposed to meet up with them. I was supposed to meet them, but no. We didn't have a cell phone on me back then, so you couldn't get me. And where was Arco? He's sitting down at 10 o'clock at night saying, so movie going to watch an X-Men. living my dream, baby. That's all.
You watched it by yourself?
Yeah, bro. Best
There's nothing wrong with that.
Nice. No. I'm just
Yeah.
saying,
Oh yeah.
because I'm thinking like it wasn't really. I don't think we thought of it like this is an event that we all need to go
No.
Yeah, it was just
because that didn't exist yet, right? Because it didn't become. It had to, because comic book movies had to build up this
Yeah.
new kind of like
Yeah.
folklore and like this majesty
Yeah.
that it was
I
like
agree.
now you have to go with your
Yeah.
friends
because it was
and
still
see.
a little bit like nerdy. Oh, sorry.
No, we were still. I think after Blade, we were still like, okay, this was good.
Yeah.
And then I think X-Men, like, we're hoping
Yeah, that's true.
This is good.
That's true.
This is,
So it wasn't a phenomenon like
There's
the
like-
rest
it'll
of the
be good.
movies.
There was still
Yeah.
that like stigma that it is a comic book movie, right? I don't think that got broken until Spider-Man, and then that became like for everybody, and it wasn't, you weren't like nerdy or like oh, you like comics, like, like you were like, now people were trying to be like, no, you don't like Spider-Man, I like Spider-Man because I just saw the movie, and you're like, bro, what? Like, and so it was like that's when like the culture shifted, and then like everybody was the biggest like Marvel comic book nerd, and so then it like we didn't have to like watch stuff in the shadows anymore, right? We didn't have to go to X-Men by ourselves because now it was a whole big thing, and there was whole events around it and like
well,
meetups and everything.
X2 got to that point. Like X2, like when X2 came out, I feel like people were like, yes, X-Men. And then again, I don't want to get negative again. We had X3, like X-Men had it. That was like the first fumble.
Yeah.
But James,
Oh yeah.
when
Yeah,
James was
that's
telling me about the things that he had seen when I met James probably after 2002 and leading into 2003's X-Men 2, he was telling me about the stuff that he was seeing online and about how Wolverine, Hugh Jackman now was not only bigger for the role, he looked more along the lines of what we thought Wolverine looked like, but he also had the hair. And it wasn't, it wasn't just pasted on hair on his face. He grew out the mutton chops and had the freaking ridiculous, hair piece, eater things going on. So, James, it just goes to show you that even 5, 6, 7 years before the advent of what we say was the beginning of social media, we were still seeing things about the movie coming out. And it was hyping us up in a way that we were talking about it and making us feel like, all right, this can be even bigger than the first one. And it was the perfect comic book movie until, then the MCU started taking over and they all started eclipsing, one after the other.
No, I would give again, Blade is the great grandfather of this whole thing.
Right.
And then, but I would also not that we haven't given him enough credit, but I would give Hugh Jackman a lot of credit for what we have today because the
100%.
And man,
Oh, yeah.
this has never shied away. Doing a comic book movie has never been beneath him. He's embraced
Right.
this character. He
Yep.
personally thanked Len Wein. I think
Yeah.
Arco, even if I maybe this might be a apocryphal audience, so I apologize, but I think Wolverine. I think Hugh Jackman was the guy's like, let's do the hair. Like we really got
Most likely.
Yeah.
Well, because
remember,
he was making up for the fact that he auditioned wrong for the role. He thought he was actually supposed to act like a Wolverine, and I'm like, I don't know how a Wolverine acts, bro, but you're on two legs. So go ahead, sir. I'm sorry. I didn't cut you.
So one of the great things about the story of Hugh Jackman taking this role is first that he wasn't the first choice. It was what's his name?
Dougray Scott,
Right.
sir.
Dougray Scott. Now Dougray Scott couldn't do it because he was doing Mission Impossible 2 and with Tom Cruise, and so he couldn't do it. And truthfully, for me, I don't think he could have been as great of a Wolverine as Hugh Jackman. And I think that everything happens for a reason, the way it's supposed to happen. And I think that all worked out the way it was supposed to because Hugh Jackman was born to be Wolverine. He's great. There's a thing in comic books where you feel like the comic book character walked onto the screen. And that's what Hugh Jackman was to Wolverine. He was the perfect other than him being how tall is Hugh Jackman? 6'2", 6'3"?
6'3".
Yeah. So other than him being way too tall to be Wolverine, he was perfect.
taller than he needs to be. It's okay.
Yeah.
And he apologized. For that.
Sorry that I grew too much in my life, guys. But I think but like you guys were saying, the success of it wasn't that it was just Hugh Jackman fit the role or do what, but he treated it like it was any other film. He treated it the same that he would any Academy Award winning
Right.
nominated film he might have been in.
Right.
And so to be able to do that gives like credibility to your movies. If everyone's in the movies
Exactly.
like, oh, I'm just doing a comic book movie, then it's gonna be just a comic book movie. But you're like, no, I'm in like a like a comic book film, for a lack of a better phrase. You know, you treat it the way people treat films versus movies. You're going to get that in response from like the audience, that like you're not wasting our time, you're not phoning this in, you're treating it with the respect that we have for the character. And I think that's what did it. And so he just kind of like knew to do that, or maybe that's the way he approaches any job.
I
Maybe
think
he
I
approaches
think
it.
I personally think, I mean, I don't know this for a fact, but I personally think he was a fan of Wolverine
Okay.
before he got the role. He was a fan of the character.
No, he never even
He
heard of it.
wasn't?
No, he
Damn.
knew nothing of the X-Men. Absolutely.
Damn.
And he said it a million times. I knew nothing about it. My agent said, go do this, and I went to do that. Don't forget, I mean, this is a man who, while maybe not a struggling actor, was not into these types of
Household
films.
name.
The man was a singer and dancer. I mean, the guy was tapping away as in the Boy from Oz. And he's been nominated for Tony Awards. He's been nominated for an Oscar. He is a multi-talented man who, looking back, while this role made him as an actor, he would have done very well as an actor even without it, but perhaps not to this level.
Yeah, he would. His bank account wouldn't be as beautiful as I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
But to talk about what Josh was talking about, it's a very important point. So I think that choosing Hugh Jackman and choosing Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, these are pedigreed actors, right? And they're in a comic book movie. And I believe that was the blueprint for Kevin Feige, because when MCU started, it was all pedigree. Everybody, Robert Downey Jr. had been nominated. I mean, it had been through
Jeff
some
Bridges,
things, but he picked a lot of Robert Redford. He picked William Hurt. He picked really, really, really talented actors who are pedigree Oscar nominated or Oscar award winning actors, and that's what he populated the MCU with. So that was a very different concept than previous, because previous that none of that mattered. It was basically, are you an action guy? Yeah, all right, come over here and make this comic book movie with us. And and Kevin Feige changed that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Sharif. And I mean, I'll give some, like, you just shout them out, like, just a little bit more. Like, the fact that Ian McKellen did it also. Like, he's a much older Magneto than we probably would have thought.
Yeah,
he loved it, but I know he's older than we probably think of Magneto, but his Magneto will always, he's, like, up there. Like, with the Magneto.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And he's a guy who's, like, again, he loved it. He took it seriously. He embraced the character.
And he gave the character everything it needed by the way of personality, character, and gravitas of where he was as a child, where they show him at Auschwitz, and where he has been. And one of the best lines that I can remember in The Last Stand was when the mutants were saying, "Well, where's your mark?" Because they mark themselves, the mutants that were always in the forest or whatever. And he goes, "I've been marked before," and he shows off his tattoo, from the concentration camps, and he goes, "And I'll never be marked again. And I'll mark my words, a needle will never touch my skin again," something along those lines. And you believed it. I mean, the way he said it, it was everything that you thought Magneto. He brought everything to the table in these films that you thought Magneto should bring.
And it helped that him and Patrick Stewart were friends also, too.
Like best friends. They have the real actual dynamic minus the animosity of Professor X and Magneto. Like, they are that close of friends. I think, like, one was the best man at the other one's, like, it's just I think they are like legit best friends. Yeah.
So real fast, guys, because we've been talking about some of the highs and lows of the first half of this, but I don't think that we really can get through this without talking about how we go into First Class and Days of Future Past in 2014, and then the drop off. Okay, you had these new mutants for the most part, people that we haven't seen before, or younger versions of them in First Class, which brings a little bit of a freshness to it. Okay, you see how they're innocent of it all, and how they come together to be either X-Men, or later on they would be the Brotherhood of Mutants, Magneto's first version. And then in the second movie that came out, which was, again, they brought Bryan Singer back because that was a good idea. For some reason, it worked, but then they ended up firing him for reasons. They had these great stories, these templates to work with, and all they did was put these characters together, and it worked well. One of the best scenes was on the airplane when they busted Magneto out, and Charles and him are having their little chess game, and Magneto's pissed at Charles for basically hiding for the last 10 years, while the government came and started picking off mutants one by one. And while Magneto had been in jail all those years, that was a great scene, how upset he was that Charles didn't do anything while, people were killed. And we saw that Azazel was killed, and Angel was killed, I believe. Angel, Lenny Kravitz's daughter, right? Toad, people like that had been killed. Why did they have those great two films in the early 2010s, and then tell me, I don't know, this is my question, why did they go to Apocalypse and the greatest character, villainous character that you could have done anything with, they turned him into that? And I love Oscar Isaac. It's not his fault. He did everything he possibly could with what he was given.
Seemed like he took it seriously.
He took it seriously. Listen, the guy was.
I think that's the only mode he has. Yeah, I think he only takes things seriously.
Yeah. So why did they fall off? And then after that, it was like, well, that one went out the window. So forget the rest, and let's just do this. Let's just throw things and see what sticks. I mean, Dark Phoenix. You got to be kidding me. that was.
So I agree with you 100%. I don't know what happened. Maybe the regime changed or something like that behind the scenes. I don't know. But let's talk about, do you consider Deadpool to be a part of the Fox universe? I always felt like he was kind of outside of it. I don't know if it's the third wall breaking thing, or what it is, but I never felt like he was like part of the universe. And it may be because he wasn't a part of, like, he didn't have he wasn't in any of the
Films.
regular movies.
Right.
It was just the Deadpool movies.
I think he feels like that too because he was so clearly like a reset button and a reboot, like from like things that were failing. So like, oh, let's do something completely different. Let's make it like a hard R. Let it be like the most like gratuitous graphic, like jokes, low hanging fruit, like break the fourth wall, like. And so it like said like, what did everything else do? Let's run in the opposite direction. And so even though he's under the umbrella, he feels so different because he was so clearly brought in to be like the hard reset on everything.
But he was more than happy to basically allow the previous X-Men movies to ride this coattail, or vice versa, however you want to put it with the writers, because when he goes to pick up Colossus and Negasonic Teenage Warhead, when he's waiting with the cab outside, he goes, oh, it's what a big mansion. It's so funny. I only ever see two of you. It's almost like the studio can't afford any more X-Men. Come on.
The best scene of Deadpool is the end where he goes back and resets the universe by killing his old version of himself. Yeah, and killing. I think he killed Ryan Reynolds.
He killed Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
He had the script.
He's reading the Green Lantern script.
As he's reading the Green Lantern script, he shot him in the back of the head. So he really was like literally a reset for the Fox universe because
for his own. This man was Van Wilder. This man was two girls in a pizza place.
Two girls, a guy in a pizza place.
Guys in a pizza place. Okay, nobody remembers that, right? So
I do. Yeah, me and Argo. Ryan ever watched it.
Yeah, Ryan. But also let's talk about that. This is a passion project for Ryan Reynolds. He loves Deadpool.
Because he just gets to
And
be himself,
I
basically.
and I think that loving the material, loving the character is what spawns a great film. Wolverine. Hugh Jackman didn't produce the first one. He didn't produce the second one. The third one, he took the reins. He said, I'm going to produce this one. He hired James Mangold. He told James Mangold that we want to do something different. And Logan happened.
But
And Logan
the
was
Wolverine was
head
good.
and shoulders.
Yeah.
Wait, what was it?
The Wolverine, the second film that came out in 2013, that was great.
Wolverine
It was great.
The Wolverine was way better than Wolverine Origins.
Yeah,
Wolverine Origins.
I mean,
terrible.
that movie. I'll make a comic book confession. Like when I only read like Frank Miller's Wolverine run like last year for like the first time, and then I rewatched the Wolverine. I'm like, wow, this is like a pretty good adaptation of this. Miniseries.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I tuned out personally in the first. I think it was the first Wolverine movie because he like holds up his hands and they're like CG claws. It's like, bro, just give me pin snips. I'll make you like claws to just like duct tape to his wrist. Like, what are you like using computer generated?
Which is how they were back in 2000. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So the fact that 9 years later they did them like that and it looks so incredibly terrible on the screen, just goes to show you that they're thinking more along the lines of effects rather than story. And you got what you got.
And it's like, no, it's like we just don't want anything jarring. They don't have to be good. Like you
That
watch
was
like
jarring.
you watch The Thing and all practical effects, and some of it even looks a little cheesy, even though it's incredible. But it's because it's all the same. There's no jarring thing. There's no practical effects, and then a CGI whatever that's like, wait, what's going on? So when you're mixing the two, and then the choices you're making are like 3 pieces of metal, like that's what you're like putting your effort into computer generating. 3 pieces of metal. I have it in my trunk of my car. I got 3 pieces of metal we can use. Like, what are you pinching pennies there? But then as the audience, you do kind of get a feeling like, I don't know if they're taking this that seriously.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And so
I think we saw a dip because I think whoever was behind the movies stopped caring. They weren't taking the time to
they just
really,
got a cash
care
grab.
about the stories.
They didn't
because
care about
there's
us.
there's no way that you make X-Men 1, X-Men 2, and then make X-Men 3. Like that alone, and look at how they came out. 2000, 2003, 2006, which means this was a planned trilogy.
Yeah.
So it was supposed to be a trilogy. It's so not a trilogy to me that I don't even think about I don't even think about.
I don't think about Last Stand like at all. Like
think about X-Men 1 and X-Men 2, and I say those are great films, and that's
I think we have 2 like duo like things. We have X and X-Men and X2, and then First Class and Days of Future Past. Like that's as far as they go for me. Like there's no other movies in each of those like things.
And I
it's
agree.
It's like Blade 1, Blade 2,
Blade 2.
Blade 2.
Guillermo del Toro. Yeah.
Blade 2.
So,
Blade 3. Now I love Blade 2, and Blade 2 to me was great because I felt that it was scary.
Oh, it was. It was a total horror movie.
With that, like,
whenever you make a film, I think taking it seriously, Batman to me is always going to suck if he's all daylight. Batman's got to be scary. Batman's got to be popping out the shadows like the boogeyman. You have to do that, or else he doesn't work.
And putting people into wheelchairs for life because they stole
I personally
TV.
think Wolverine is that type of character. Wolverine is a tracker. He's a person who finds people, and he's a person you don't want to meet in a dark alley. And I think if you have Wolverine coming to your house at night and being all over the place would be very, very scary. And so I hope that in the next incarnation, because a new movie is on the horizon, and we're all leery, man. This has been the least excited we have been for an X-Men movie in a millennium. Okay, so we are really like he is really pushing it to the limit by creating the X-Men right now. Because when we got announced, Marvel was on a high. We were all happy. We were all our bellies were full, and we were like, yes. X-Men is coming. It's going to be amazing. Then they made 17 trash movies, and now we're like, oh, man, I don't know. I don't know about X-Men, man.
Well, let's before, because we're coming up on time. So two things I want to wrap up our podcast with was one, Logan is obviously a masterpiece. I would also say that Logan doesn't quite feel part of the same X-verse.
Yeah,
given
100%.
See?
It's a movie you could it's sort of like the Dark Knight quality. Like the Dark Knight is a superhero movie, but it's also like just a vigilante mob movie. You know, Logan is similar. Logan is like this. It's a superhero movie, but it's also about a man who's lost his way. He's trying to reconcile with his father. He's trying to reconcile with his past.
It's more that than it is about being a superhero, and that's why it works so well. You know, just like Dark Knight's more about like the kind of injustice going on in Gotham rather than it is about like the Caped Crusader.
Yeah, I agree. So those two, like I said, Logan is very much like Deadpool. It doesn't fit, but it fits, and it fits also, I think, outside of its own universe. But let's use the last few moments just to think. What are we hoping we get out of Deadpool Wolverine for the wrap up of the Fox universe and the future of the MCU?
I'm looking for a seamless transition, to be quite honest with you. I am. They're obviously hyping up the death of the Fox universe. They literally had the Fox Studio logo in ruins when they're fighting in the trailer. Okay, and then at the end of the trailer, what do they have? They have the Doctor Strange circle for them to jump through. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but wouldn't it be amazing if that's how they go from their universe, the Fox Dead universe, to the Marvel MCU universe? I mean, so, while that may not be very seamless, I'm looking for a story that brings it together seamlessly without having too much. Going back to The Last Stand, there was just too much going on for it to make a lot of sense to everybody that isn't a comic book nerd. Okay, and it even took away from me, and I knew what they were trying to do. I knew the stories that they were using. So if it's seamless and it's not too busy, it's going to be a home run for everybody.
All right. So what I'm expecting is I'm glad that I feel like Deadpool is going to be pure to what Deadpool has been. They're not going to lose a step as far as, Disney's nerfing everything and Disney's calming everything down. And we're not letting Deadpool be Deadpool. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to a good Marvel movie because I haven't had one in quite some time.
In a hot minute, yeah.
I'm very happy to have a good Marvel movie. I am actually, and I know this is sacrilege, but I wasn't a big proponent of he needs to be in the yellow suit. It wasn't.
You shut up now.
I know. I'm sorry. I apologize.
And just end this right now.
I apologize to all of the fans, but so for me, I wasn't excited about the suit initially. I had heard about it before I saw it, but once I saw it, I said it looks great, and I was very happy about it. And
injected into my veins.
So I am very happy about it now. I don't really want Hugh Jackman to be in the next big Marvel bonanza, whatever that may
have this
come out as. I would like this to be his crescendo in the universe and him kind of passing the baton to Deadpool
again.
like his curtain call encore to Logan,
right.
You come in, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that's what I'm looking for, and I'm looking forward to Deadpool being prevalent in the Marvel universe. Deadpool is a great connective tissue that they can use for all the films. Deadpool popping up in a film it's going to do exactly what Wolverine was doing previously. It makes things a little bit better. The director has talked about he's talked about that he wants to do Spider-Man and Wolverine movie. Oh, yeah, Spider-Man and Wolverine movie, which I love the dynamic between Spider-Man and Wolverine. So I would love that movie. Now, I know everybody wants Daredevil and Spider-Man, and I want that too. But Wolverine and Spider-Man to me is a great dynamic. It's almost like Spider-Man and the Punisher. That's how it feels to me. So I'm really excited for that dynamic. And Wolverine doesn't have a no kill policy, and it's always nice for a person with a kill policy to work with a person with a no kill policy. That's always great. And now that we've seen, well, we haven't seen it yet, but obviously Hugh Jackman is hilarious. He has comic chops from all of his other stuff, and he's always been a funny guy in general. He loves Ryan. They're great together. But I believe that he could make Wolverine even more palatable than he's been, because Wolverine hasn't really been our source for comedy. Maybe a little odd joke here and there, but he wasn't really the comedy person of 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 the Marvel universe, but I think he can be, because I think he's funny. I think that Deadpool is a character that likes to play off of a real serious person. That's why Deadpool and
Yeah.
Cable works so
I
well.
think that's where it will get its like magic, is like that Abbott and Costello, like straight man, funny guy type
Yes.
dynamic, but give, like you're saying, give like Wolverine some comedic moments, but the dynamic of one being such a straight guy and one being such a like antics galore is where it's gonna get like it's a lot of
Right.
it humor from.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know if you guys have been to the movies, but Wolverine and Deadpool have a little thing to tell you to silence your cell phone. And it is hilarious. It is
Okay.
so funny. It has nothing to do with nothing. I don't even, it's obviously it's not in the movie or anything, but it looks like it's a scene from the film that they're making, but it's not. But the chemistry between them and Wolverine wanting to kill people and Deadpool saying, "Hey, calm down, big guy," in sexual tension. It's great. I love it so much, and I'm so happy about it. But yeah, man, I hope that we will get um I hope we'll get some life injected into the Marvel universe. I'm hoping that they can ride this wave of Deadpool and let Deadpool will be a great person to be in your what do they call those scenes at the end of the movies?
Like the post credit scene, the
The
stinger, yeah.
post credit scene.
Yeah.
So Deadpool in the post credit scenes would be amazing. It would make it, and it would give everybody that great feeling. Even if you watch a terrible movie, Deadpool at the end cracking some jokes with whoever was in the movie and bringing that connective tissue and leading you into whatever's going to be next, and also literally saying it because he can break the fourth wall. It's a beautiful thing, and I don't know that Marvel has it in them to do it correctly. But it would be amazing if they did that, and that can help them. And you got to give creative control, man. You got to give creative control to whoever's making the films. Ryan Reynolds has creative control over Deadpool. It's fantastic. When Hugh Jackman had creative control over Wolverine, it's fantastic. You get gold. You got to let these creators create. You can't put them through the Marvel machine. You have to let them do their thing. And I think the issue is people care about test audiences, and Wolverine tests really well. Whatever this BS from this last movie, this tested really well. So let's put more of that in the next film. That's no way to make a film, because that's not what anybody wants. People want, and like we've all illustrated today, we all said we want character development. We want that over action scenes. You know why? Because the action scenes don't mean anything if you don't care about the characters. I try to explain that this is something I explain to my godson all the time, and he loves action. And I'm like, bro, you still need something to care about, because you can't. The fight scenes don't matter if you don't care about the person. It's much more impactful for me to get up the courage to punch Arco in the face if it's been building up the whole movie and I've been scared of Arco,
And I
you
deserve
know.
it.
And I've been scared of Arco, and now I punched him in the face. That action scene is going to be way better than if you didn't have that character development, you didn't have that story arc. So I just hope that they bring back story arcs. They start thinking, Marvel's acting like they don't have a plan anymore. I'm like, who's on the Avengers right now? We don't even know. So, and I mean, it's not like the Fox universe was great with this either. Fox universe was like it was like the writers of Family Guy. They were just throwing darts at a board, and they were like, "Yeah, let's put this in. Let's put this in. Let's put this in. Let's put this character in." So I hope that the new X-Men can be a part of the new MCU, which needs a rebranding. And like Deadpool said he's Marvel Jesus, and I
I was
believe
going to say that.
man.
There you go.
I pray that he is.
Yeah. Well, I know we got a few more moments, Josh. And
Yeah,
we got to jump in.
I have a lot less to say than everybody because I'm a lot less comic-y, in the collection. But what I think for this movie specifically, the Deadpool and Wolverine, I don't think we have to worry about the Marvel Disney family friendly anything. I think they know their downfall, what it has been, and they're using this as, even if it's a one time get out of jail free, like it's kind of, they broke the seal when they like put Logan on like Disney Plus, right? Now we're like, all right, guys, we're getting a little bit, and I think they're gonna let Deadpool be Deadpool. I think in as if it didn't miss a beat. That's what I think. Whether it will go on past that, I don't know, because then how blue do they want their movies to get in terms of still keeping the Disney umbrella? But I think this one will get like a one-time pass because they're not dumb. They're not sitting there thinking like, Marvel's killing it like always. It's just like 2010 all over again. Like they know that it's like nothing, and that all their ratings are just like coughing dust, and like moths are flying out of their wallets now. But I think that they know what they need to do, and I think they are correcting it. I think there was a time in which, to wrap it all up for James, that the mindset was, what are you expecting, yellow spandex? Now we're at a time where it's like, yes, give us yellow spandex. We don't want this like, oh, it's a superhero movie, but it's like gritty and cool, and it's like more realistic than it is a superhero movie. Now it's like, no, we want, like, lean into it. We don't need it to be Dark Knight where it's like gritty and realistic. Like, give us like everything. Give it to us all. And one thing that I think would be really cool, if they could pull it off, only if they could pull it off, is do it better than they did with Captain Marvel, where like Captain Marvel was nowhere to be found, and then like, no, you guys, she was here the whole time. We just forgot to mention her, and we're definitely not just shoehorning her in now. But like, what I would like them to do is, like, if they're doing stuff with like Doctor Strange and stuff like that, it'd be funny if they kind of like ended up like little scenes from movies that we know, like maybe they're in the whole war fighting Thanos, and almost in like winking like, no, they've been here the whole time. But then you could have Deadpool kind of being like, are they just shoehorning us in? Were we in this original fight? Like, and breaking the fourth wall in that way. But this kind of like ties it together more into one cohesive thing. It would be funny if they were like kind of appearing. They did that in a Community, where the Jack Black played a character that was always in their class and they didn't recognize him, and they did a whole series of fake flashbacks in which there's scenes that you knew from the season, but just like with Jack Black like in the background that you never saw before, and it's kind of like he was here the whole time. And I hope that they do something like that. But I hope that they use this as like, all right, this is a hard restart, a hard go. We won't forget everything beforehand, but we're not going to lean on that. Let's start it fresh and new. We have a good foundation, and we're going to go. And it's 8 o'clock right now, and Monday Night Raw is on, so I got to wrap this up, guys. I'm sorry. It was too much of a cliffhanger last week. So,
all right, well, we're gonna wrap things up. The last thing I will just say from my hope,
I was gonna say, what about you?
I just hope it's a good movie. I'm not as harsh on the Marvel Universe, some of their more current properties, as some of my other co-hosts here, but that's fine. I just want it to be a good movie. If I had my wish thing, one of my wishes always was to see Hugh Jackman's Wolverine fight Mark Ruffalo's Hulk. If we get a scene with Mark Ruffalo's Hulk fighting Wolverine, I would love that.
That'd be sick. That'd be awesome.
I would also love to see Cyclops in his X-Men 90s blue costume in live action for one scene.
That'd be fun.
I'd be happy.
I could see them doing that. I think they kind of get that's what people want.
Yes, if it's James Marsden in his as Cyclops in the 97 blue,
Yeah.
Fantastic. Blow my glove. And this has nothing to do with X-Men, but I'll end it like this. Since we're going into like we want realism for costumes, man, that Fantastic Four movie comes out, Galactus better be a guy in a purple suit
with a big
giant
G,
helmet.
with big G right here. That's it, at that point. Yeah.
So, and with that, audience, I'm going to wrap up this X-Men universe, Fox universe episode. I could not have done this episode without my three other co-hosts. So thank you, Arco, as always.
Thank you, James. I appreciate it.
Sharif, thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure. It was a lot of fun.
And Josh, thank you.
Thank you. It's always so much fun to see how much I don't know. It's really great. I love it. I really do. I do. It's so great.
It's a great having all of you and your thoughts, and listening audience. If you have your thoughts about the Fox X-Men universe and what you hope for Deadpool, Wolverine, please place them in the comments section on the Facebook group when this episode drops. You know what? I just recently found out that our Spotify thing actually has a section where I could put a Q&A in if you're interested. So maybe I'll put a QA and you can do a poll or a Q&A. I'll see if I can put that for the episode. What's your favorite Fox X-Men movie? We'll do that. So check that out.
I like that.
Awesome.
We're on Instagram at Secret Origins MC. You can follow us there. I try to post things from different things that Arco and Joe and Richie give me to post occasionally. And we thank you for taking this journey through Fox X-Men movies, and we'll talk to you on the next episode.